And we're kicking off today with John Cena, who is in the midst of his longest return to WWE that we've seen in years, but the 16-time WWE World Champion has yet to wrestle on TV. That'll change this weekend when Cena and LA Knight face Solo Sikoa and Jimmy Uso, and this match could prove to be a warm-up for a much bigger name in the Bloodline. During Wrestling Observer Radio, it was reported that the consensus is that Cena will face Roman Reigns at WWE Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia, which will take place on November 4th. It was added that Knight would likely be the Tribal Chief's opponent at Survivor Series, and you have to imagine that both matches would see the undisputed WWE Universal title on the line. WWE has already been sowing the seeds of a Knight-Reigns showdown, with Knight helping Cena fend off the Bloodline, and the megastar had a backstage segment with Paul Heyman not too long ago. Knight has called winning the world title in WWE a necessity, and while we're not sure if he'll be the one to dethrone Roman Reigns, he'll have a shot at Survivor Series in Chicago, Illinois. Roman Reigns will return to programming on the October 13th episode of SmackDown from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the show the next night proves the head of the table is a draw. WrestleTix reports that out of the 4,107 sold for the October 14th live event in Kansas City, 359 were sold after the announcement that Roman Reigns will be in action at the untelevised event. At the house show, Reigns will defend his title against Sami Zayn in a rematch from Elimination Chamber, as fans want to catch their Tribal Chief in person. Over to NXT, and next week's episode will be a stacked card to combat AEW Dynamite's Title Tuesday, with some of the biggest names coming to the Gold brand. Cody Rhodes will be making a major announcement on the show, while Asuka will return to the brand she once dominated to face Roxanne Perez. John Cena will be in Carmelo Hayes' corner when he faces Braun Breaker, who will have Paul Heyman, and there will also likely be appearances by Becky Lynch and Dirty Dominic Mysterio. Wade Keller of PW Torch reports that this stacked show is a collaborative effort between Bruce Pritchard and Paul Heyman to bring some of WWE's big names to NXT for the show. AEW will have its own stacked show to combat NXT, and whatever show emerges victorious, there will be plenty of excitement and action this coming Tuesday. Next month, AEW will host its annual Full Gear pay-per-view, and the show could see the arrival of a massive name once associated with WWE. Speaking to Kevin Undergaro of AfterBuzz TV this week, Mercedes Mone mentioned the upcoming AEW event in LA, and when asked if she'd be appearing, she said it's possible, if her schedule allows it. Mone was seen without a protective walking boot, suggesting that her ankle is close to recovery, and she's nearing an in-ring return, and rumors of her joining AEW have been circulating for some time. Mercedes Mone was present at AEW All In inside Wembley Stadium, and the former IWGP Women's Champion was shown multiple times on camera, so AEW aren't afraid to show the New Japan star. Had Mone not been injured, the belief is that she would have made her AEW debut inside Boston's TD Garden for the Blood and Guts episode, but those plans, if they existed, had to be scrapped. Mone would be a huge acquisition for AEW, and she has plenty of history with reigning Women's World Champion Saraya, and will the boss be in LA for Full Gear? Time will tell. Since launching in 2019, AEW has signed several names once associated with WWE, while the Stamford promotion is hit back by signing Cody Rhodes, Brian Pillman Jr., and most recently, Jade Cargill. Now WWE is on the hunt for more elite talent, as on Wrestling Observer Radio, it was stated that several AEW contracts will be coming up at the end of this year, and WWE plans on signing all of the key ones. We're not sure who WWE sees as key, but it is known that WWE has its eye on MJF and has had their eye on signing Wardlow in the past. WWE's creative direction for Jade Cargill has been deemed massively important, as she's not going to be the last person to jump from AEW to WWE. WWE wants to coax AEW talent by showing them how well ex-AEW stars like Cargill are treated, and who do you expect to be signed by WWE? During AEW Dynamite Grand Slam, Adam Cole suffered an ankle injury when he came down to ringside to support his best friend MJF in his world title match with Samoa Joe. This injury resulted in MJF defending the ROH World Tag titles on his own at WrestleDream, and those hoping to see Better Than You Baby team again soon will be disappointed at the latest news. During Cole's recent Twitch stream, the popular star revealed that he will need not one, but two surgeries on his ankle, which will keep him out of action indefinitely. Cole is set to have 4 plates and 4 screws put in him in the process, and said that although this is the most painful injury he's ever been through, he's confident that he will return to the ring. Cole doesn't appear to have gone under the knife yet, but that day is coming, and every week he's out of action, AEW is missing out on one of the most popular stars and storylines. At times, it feels like the biggest heel in AEW is technical issues, as there's been several examples of issues causing problems for programming. For this week's Dynamite, Adam Cole's entire video was so botched that they had to re-air the entire thing later on, and now TBS themselves have issued a statement. When PW Insider reached out to TBS about Dynamite and possible replays due to the aforementioned issue, among others, TBS said they were looking into the matter. The statement said that the show is available on TBS.com as well as the app, and that they're working on potential video-on-demand options for those who missed the show. Whatever TBS and Warner Bros. Discovery are working on, it's in everybody's interest that it comes soon as possible, as AEW are getting pretty sick and tired of these constant technical issues. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select pointed out that in addition to the technical issues on this week's Dynamite, there was also an incorrect TBS listing, which stated the show would be starting hours earlier than it did. Between these issues and other technical problems the previous week, the report stated that there's a lot of frustration within AEW, as they often get blamed for these issues, despite there being nothing they could have done, and they did their best considering the circumstances. One source for Warner Bros. Discovery said that these issues are inexcusable and felt bad for AEW for having to deal with them, especially since AEW are blamed and often mocked for these issues. Tony Khan has often spoken highly of his deal with WBD, but the AEW leader's patience can only last so long, and those in AEW are hoping that the technical issues this week will be the last. On this week's AEW Dynamite, it was revealed that Sammy Guevara was not medically cleared to compete, and now we know why the Spanish God was kept out of the ring. During AEW WrestleDream, Guevara, Will Ospreay, and Konosuke Takeshita bested Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, and Kota Ibushi, but Guevara would suffer a serious concussion during the bout. It's currently unclear when exactly Guevara suffered the concussion during the match, and with this being a concussion, there's no telling when he'll be back in the ring. This is certainly a setback for AEW's creative, as Guevara only recently turned on Chris Jericho to join Don Callis' family, and now any plans for him will have to be put on hold. On Dynamite, Guevara was replaced by Kyle Fletcher, and the show would later see Powerhouse Hobbs join the family, and we hope to have an update on Sammy's condition in the coming days. After this week's episode of AEW Dynamite, the promotion taped its Rampage show, and an ex-WWE star made his in-ring debut for the promotion. At the taping, former WWE superstar Lince Dorado debuted with a bang as he competed in a 4-way to determine the next challenger for the ROH World Championship. Dorado faced off against fellow WWE alum Johnny TV, aka John Morrison, as well as Commander and Penta El Cero Miedo, though we won't be spoiling who earned a shot against Eddie Kingston. Dorado signed with WWE in July 2016 and remained until November 2021, and perhaps this debut will be a sign of things to come for the Lucha House Party member. This weekend, Io Sky will defend her Women's Championship against Asuka and Charlotte Flair, and while we can't say who will win, we have an inclination of one of the names who will lose. Zero News reports that a WWE source has said not to be surprised if Charlotte Flair doesn't win the gold this weekend, but added that she's expected to be in a title match at WrestleMania 40. Of course, plans could always change, and with Flair being one of WWE's most decorated champions and closing in on her father's record, WWE may give her some quick title wins to help her along. To know exactly whether Flair will win at Fastlane or not, you'll just have to watch the show, but don't be too surprised if the most decorated female champion ever leaves empty-handed. When L.A. Knight appears on WWE programming, it won't be long before he uses his "yeah" catchphrase, a word that Knight used long before he signed with the company. Before WWE, Knight was Eli Drake in NWA and Impact Wrestling, and would often use the slight variation of "dummy, yeah," but has avoided using the first word in WWE. Speaking to Chris Van Vliet of Insight, Knight dismissed the rumors that WWE nixed the dummy part of his catchphrase, saying it wouldn't feel organic in WWE, but he has considered bringing it back. He explained, "I've considered it, I don't know. Some people want it, probably 90% of people don't even know. If it came out organically, maybe, but I never want to crowbar anything. It's all gotta be an organic thing. That's one of the other things, is that I've never really forced any lines. At this point, I've got programmed stuff that's in there, here and there, wherever, but in its origination, it was all kind of stuff that just happened. Could that come back? Yeah, maybe. Or maybe just sprinkled in here and there. Knight's "yeah" has proven to be just a part of the megastar's popularity in WWE, and while he may bring the dummy part back, he's not going to force the matter on TV. Earlier this year, it was reported that Kairi Sane would be coming back to WWE close to 3 years after asking to be taken off of TV, and 2 years since she fully left the company. During her time away, Sane has worked with Stardom, becoming the first IWGP Women's Champion, and she will have one last match before her WWE return is complete. That match will be at the Stardom Nagoya Golden Fight 2023 on October 9th, where Kairi will be part of a group that'll challenge for Stardom's 6-woman tag team championships. Now, given that this will be her final Stardom match, it's likely Kairi's team will be defeated, but we can't rule out her having one last win before vacating the gold shortly after. Fans are excited to see Sane return to WWE, though some are nervous as Nia Jax also recently returned, and the pair were involved in an incident which seriously hurt Sane. Despite fans laying into Jax for what happened, Sane has always said that she was out of position and it was her fault, and we'll have to see what her second run with WWE looks like. When Matt Riddle was released by WWE, some fans were surprised, as despite the many controversies to his name, Riddle had been presented as one of the upper-tier names on Raw. Before his release, Riddle had been working closely with Drew McIntyre, a 2-time former WWE champion, and WWE had big plans for the Odd Couple tag team. On Twitter, WrestleVotes noted that WWE had plans at one point for the team to be called McRiddle, and there was a ton of pieces of merchandise designed with the team name. Obviously, those plans never came to fruition, and McIntyre has since been teasing a heel turn on Raw, though in his own view, is simply tired of fighting the battles of other superstars for them. We're not sure if McDonald's would be loving it at the idea of their sandwich name being used for a WWE tag team, but whatever Riddle does next in the ring, it won't involve WWE or Drew McIntyre. In the world of professional wrestling, few names are more famous and equally infamous than Hulk Hogan, who had plenty to say when he appeared on Chris Van Vliet's Insight podcast. During the show, Hogan said he has just renewed his deal with WWE and hopes to make an appearance on TV soon, and maybe, just maybe, even have a match. Hogan added that at one point, Shane McMahon tried to get him for a match at WrestleMania 39, and according to Hogan, Shane said that his son Nick Hogan could face him as a surrogate. In the interest of fairness, we should also add that a WWE source who spoke to Fightful said that this was in no way true, and that Nick's name hasn't come up in WWE in any capacity for over a decade. It was noted that while McMahon has had wacky ideas in the past, not even Shane would come up with the notion of having a non-wrestler no one has thought about in years compete at WrestleMania. Another claim by Hogan was that at WrestleMania 25 in 2009, he was set to face John Cena, though on Twitter, fans reacted with immense skepticism, and many said Hogan was simply lying. Speaking about Netflix's biopic of his life that was going to star Chris Hemsworth, Hogan said the project is pretty much dead, especially as director Todd Phillips has moved on to Joker 2. Hogan had plenty to say in the interview, some of which may even be true, but there's no denying that the Hulkster proves to be a much discussed name in wrestling years after his last match. On this week's WWE NXT, Rhea Ripley accompanied Dominic Mysterio for his North American title match, and the Eradicator had some very un-PG language for a fan in attendance. Stood in the ring, Ripley smirked at a fan who was laying into her with insults and jeers before telling the fan in question that he is a mama verga. For any of you not versed in Spanish profanity, Ripley called the fan a sucker, as she seems to be getting lessons in the language from her fluent allies in the Judgment Day. Ripley would prove to be instrumental in Dominic regaining the North American title from Trick Williams, and this very un-PG remark was quite the moment during this week's WWE NXT. Now, Kevin Nash's days in the ring are behind him at this point, but with his decades of experience and larger-than-life persona, Big Daddy Cool remains a valuable asset in wrestling. During his Click This podcast, Nash was asked about the possibility of joining AEW and said it'd take around $6 million and a private jet for him to ink a deal with Tony Khan. Nash then immediately revealed that he just signed a new contract with WWE, but we don't know if the promotion offered anything from Nash's list of demands that would get him to sign with AEW. WWE has treated Kevin Nash very well over the years, with 2 Hall of Fame rings on his fingers, and while many legends would love the chance to do something with AEW, Diesel isn't interested. At AEW All In, it was announced that the paid attendance for the show was 81,035, an all-time record, but it was later stated that the actual attendance was somewhere around the 72,000 mark. That second report didn't come fast enough for Will Ospreay, who had the 81,035 figure tattooed on his body, and more recently, it was reported by some that 85,000 tickets were distributed. So what is the actual attendance of All In? Well, on Twitter, Tony Khan stated, "The reason I announced the actual paid attendance 81,035 tickets sold instead of saying over 85,000 tickets distributed is because our 81,035 sold at All In Wembley Stadium in London is the all-time ticket sales record, whereas WCW North Korea holds tickets distributed record. WCW's Collision in Korea crossover show with New Japan may have been the highest attended wrestling event ever, but many were forced to attend under orders of the government, so is therefore not considered credible when discussing attendance figures. As for the 72,000 number, it is believed that this is the actual attendance of people at the show, but not the 81,035 who paid to be there, and hopefully things will be clearer when AEW returns to London in 2024. Before signing with WWE in 2022, Cody Rhodes would often make anti-WWE remarks on AEW TV and infamously destroyed a throne, clearly inspired by Triple H. Next week, Rhodes will be part of WWE's efforts to beat AEW Dynamite in the ratings war, and when a fan said it was awkward, Rhodes defended his AEW run and his comments against WWE. On Twitter, Rhodes said that he enjoyed his time in AEW and always tried to help AEW win, in addition to putting his heart and soul in the place he helped create and build. Rhodes explained his February 2022 departure by saying an issue arose, but wished the AEW team well with their continued efforts. Cody Rhodes was once seen as an AEW lifer, but that's far from the case now. And while he hopes to see NXT win in the ratings next week, he'll always have a place in his heart for AEW. Tammy Sytch was involved in a fatal 3-car crash last year. The driver of the car hit by Sytch was identified as Julian LaFrancis Lassiter Jr. of Daytona Beach Shores and was transported to Halifax Health Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead. Because of this, Sytch was arrested, as it was determined the wreck was her fault, and that was just the beginning. It was also reported that Sytch faces a maximum prison sentence of 25 years after pleading no contest to a charge of manslaughter while driving under the influence. After initially asserting her innocence of all charges, she changed her plea in court shortly before the case went to trial. According to PW Insider, Florida State Attorney R.J. Larizza filed a sentencing memorandum on September 26th, ahead of next month's sentencing on multiple criminal charges in the 7th Judicial Circuit. In the memo, R.J. Larizza called Tammy Sytch a danger to society and wrote a detailed list of dates related to all her run-ins with the law, as well as her many trips to prison. It should be noted that the maximum sentence for drunk driving manslaughter is 15 years in prison. The attorney is also asking for a maximum sentence of 10 years for driving with a suspended license that carries the death penalty. Therefore, the prosecutor wants her to spend 26 years in prison. As we mentioned before, Brian Pillman Jr. has signed with WWE, and already the company is teasing his arrival in NXT with a series of vignettes. Those vignettes show Pillman watching footage that relates to either himself or his late father, but despite the buzz, WWE doesn't have plans going any further than what we're seeing. House of Wrestling reports that no real plans for Pillman have been discussed beyond these vignettes, so there's no clue on what he'll be doing in NXT once he debuts. Pillman was with AEW for years, but his career never went too far with the company, and while he's hoping for better in WWE, nothing is planned at this time for his time on the Gold brand. It was last month that The Rock teased competing at WrestleMania 40 against Roman Reigns, but is this match actually in the works? When Ringside News asked sources in WWE, they were told that The Rock always wants rumors about a return, as it keeps his name in the headlines and increases his value, but for now, there's no plans for him at WrestleMania 40. A match may not be in the works right now, but that could change. And do you want to see Rocky compete next April? And we're ending with Dynamite's Title Tuesday, as there'll be plenty in store for AEW to combat the efforts of NXT. Bryan Danielson will face Swerve Strickland in a number 1 contenders match for a shot at the TNT title, while Jay White will face Hangman Adam Page. Don Callis' newest family member, Powerhouse Hobbs, will face Chris Jericho, while Jon Moxley returns to action to challenge international champion Rey Fenix. AEW Women's World Champion Saraya will defend against Hikaru Shida, and with the much-anticipated in-ring debut of Adam Copeland, Dynamite will be quite the show this coming Tuesday.